¿Alguna vez has llevado dentro un sueño enorme y aún así has dejado que tu propia pereza lo enterrara en silencio? Hubo una vez un joven que estaba convencido de que sería el más rico del pueblo, admirado por todos, viviendo esa vida con la que cualquiera sueña. Pero al final, por culpa de dos simples palabras, mañana lo hago, su campo se convirtió en un infierno. La maleza devoró la tierra, los sueños comenzaron a agonizar, y el día en que cayó de rodillas en medio del sembrado, tocando un brote a punto de morir, entendió una verdad cruel. No fue la pobreza lo que mató su futuro, fue su propia pereza.
I still remember that morning vividly. The morning I stood in the middle of my family's field in Kansas, holding a foreclosure notice in my hand, with weeds at my feet nearly up to my knees, cold and wet with the early morning dew. The wind swept across the abandoned land, making a rustling sound that felt exactly like mocking laughter. It was the cruelest moment of my life. I was only 27 years old, healthy, still had both my hands, still had every opportunity. And yet I was about to lose everything just because I had said the same thing too. People often think a life falls apart because of one big accident, one violent event. But no. My life did not shatter in a single day. It rotted away little by little in mornings of sleeping in unfinished plans, in the hours I spent sitting on the front porch, imagining success instead of stepping into the field and working. I used to believe I was born to do something great. And I told that to everyone, my neighbors, my friends, even myself. I was going to turn the old farm my parents left me into the proudest place in the whole area. I was going to succeed. I was going to be rich. I was going to prove that I was not ordinary. There was only one truth I did not dare admit back then. The one destroying my dream was not poverty, not fate. It was me. I stood there in silence for a few more seconds, then folded the paper and slipped it into my shirt pocket, and as if doing that would make everything feel less real. But the field in front of me was still there, silent, bleak, and cold, like an accusation that did not need words. I turned back into the house, passing the old armchair by the window, where I used to sit for hours sketching out big plans for my life. In the kitchen, the coffee maker clicked and sputtered, familiar in a way that felt irritating. I poured myself a cup and told myself, I just need to rest for a bit. Then I'll figure something out. And at that exact moment, I heard a pickup truck pull into the yard. Through the fogged-up window, I saw Walter step out of the truck, his old baseball cap pulled low, his boots caked with mud. He did not hurry to knock on the door. He just stood there, his eyes sweeping across the yard, the peeling paint on the porch, then stopping at the field behind the house, as if he were reading out loud the very thing I had been trying to hide. When I opened the door, he raised an eyebrow slightly. How much longer are you going to leave everything like this, Ethan? I tightened my grip on the coffee cup in my hand. I'm thinking about it. He looked at me, his voice dropping lower. No, you're procrastinating. His words were not loud, but they fell into the quiet kitchen like something heavy dropping straight into my chest. I turned away and set the coffee cup down on the table harder than necessary. Fio, everybody has times when they move a little slower, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Walter stepped inside and pulled out a chair, like someone far too familiar with my stubbornness. He looked at the calendar on the wall, still stuck on last month, then asked quietly, a little slower, or so slow you end up losing your whole life? I did not answer. Outside, the wind swept through the field again, ice cold. I pulled out a chair and sat down across from him, so my eyes fixed on the ripple of coffee still trembling on the tabletop. After a long while, Walter slowly pulled a worn envelope from his jacket pocket and set it right in front of me. I recognized the bank's logo in the top left corner, and my throat suddenly went dry. They sent me a copy too, he said evenly. without a trace of threat in his voice. Maybe they thought a neighbor would know how to pull you back up. I touched the envelope without opening it. Walter leaned slightly toward me. Ethan, this time it's not about empty promises anymore." I let out a dry laugh, but the sound that came out was so hollow that even I found it strange. "I know how to read, Walter. I know my situation." He did not respond right away. He just looked at me with a gaze that made me more uncomfortable than a scolding ever could. "Knowing is not the same as facing it," he said. I swallowed hard and turned toward the window. Out in the yard, my father's old tractor was still sitting under a faded tarp, covered in dust like a memory forgotten for too long. He lowered his voice. "Your father did not hold on to this land just for you to watch it die a little more every day." I wanted to fire back with something sharp, something like this was my land, my life, and I would handle it myself. But before the words could leave my mouth, my eyes fell on the old tarp in the yard again. Under it was not just my father's tractor. Oh, under it were the summer mornings when he used to wake me before dawn, the smell of engine oil, the smell of damp earth, the sound of his rough laughter. "A man doesn't grow up by daydreaming, Ethan." I lowered my head, my hands clenched so tightly they turned white. Walter said nothing more, and it was that silence that made it hard for me to breathe. I stood up and walked out to the porch before that cramped kitchen forced me to admit what I had been avoiding for years. That the early morning air cut into my skin, bitter cold. I pulled the tarp off the tractor, and a thin layer of dust rose into the pale sunlight. The paint was peeling, the steering wheel was rusted, but it was still there, stubborn and enduring, like a reminder I had never been brave enough to face head-on. Walter followed me out and stopped one step behind me. "Do you hear it?" he asked. I frowned. He looked out at the field. "This land is calling your name, and you keep pretending you don't hear it." I let out a quiet laugh, this time not because I was brushing it off, but because I knew he was right. Some truths, once they are spoken out loud, leave you with nowhere to run. I placed my hand on the freezing body of the tractor, the rough metal making my palm go numb. In my mind, I suddenly saw every harvest season that had slipped by. Every morning I had pulled the blanket over my head while the sun came up and went back down outside. Walter stood beside me, his voice slow and steady. "You're not lacking strength, Ethan. You've just let comfort control you for too long." I stayed silent, feeling my heart grow heavier. I kept my hand on the body of the tractor, as if the moment I let go, I would drift right back into the man I used to be, the one who always knew what needed to be done, but never truly started. The wind moved through the empty yard, carrying the smell of dry soil and weeds. I took a long breath, so slow that my chest started to ache. If I start now... "Is it too late?" I asked, my eyes still fixed on the field ahead. Walter did not answer right away. He stepped forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with me. "Whether it's too late or not," he said softly, "won't change a thing if you're still standing here." And maybe that is what I remember most after all. That life does not change in one shining moment, but in the moment you stop lying to yourself. If this story touched you in any way, I'd leave a like, follow, and subscribe so I can share more stories like this. I truly want to hear from you. What state or city in America are you watching from? Or have you ever gone through a time in your life when you knew you needed to change but kept putting it off?